Corbridge has a lot to offer the trekker passing through fresh off Hadrian's wall, just like Kit and I. The room at the Wheatsheaf pub was very comfortable last night, and our breakfast was indeed a feast. The pub is really central to the town and just a short walk away from a key attraction, the Roman village of Corbridge, near the banks of the River Tyne. Hi, I'm Warren Brandon. Welcome to another Linleys video. The entry buildings to the Roman village of Corbridge has so many artefacts and information displays to look at. The carved lion, known as the Corbridge lion, was uncovered over 100 years ago and has an intriguing history. During its use in Roman days, it became a water fountain, but it was probably initially sculpted to be a top stone on a grave. Outside the whole Roman village is remarkable. The sheer scale and size of the site is impressive, and I understand that there's more of the village still buried, yet to be explored. Kit and I made use of the audio guides, which gave us a narrative to explain a little about what we're looking at. According to archaeological research, as far as I understand, the construction of large parts of the site were halted after a significant fire destroyed part of the village. A very large grain storage building with underfloor ventilation to keep the food dry was built but not quite completed. The stone slab floors were raised up on columns, not specifically for heating, but to ensure the ground remained ventilated to avoid dampness. The main street continued through the centre of the village and linked up with the primary routes outside, including Staingate, the main route east to west running on the south side of Hadrian's wall. To the side of the main street just here was a large water trough, rectangular and formed of neatly cut slabs of stone. This large flat area here was going to become a new housing section of the village with some large homes and other buildings. Either the funding ran out or priorities changed as the construction of the buildings was not completed. To the west of the village area, the views over the River Tyne are clear. Durr Street, heading mostly north to south, was a main link between the English lands and Scotland. There was a river crossing near here too. This building has a very special purpose. Money was stored here in what could be called a vault. the narrow steps down would have had a sturdy door at the top to keep out unwanted visitors, and maybe a security soldier standing guard too. Money would have been deposited here like a bank, and soldiers would have taken their money out for shopping, rent and payments. I guess there was a vaulted ceiling, deeply covered in stone and buried to add layers of security for the stored riches beneath. Maybe in the walls there were shelves and pigeonholes, like modern safety deposit boxes. I don't think they had spreadsheets and databases, online banking or cashless payment methods back in Roman days. I wonder what they would think if they knew how modern money management technologies would be like 2,000 years later. Back through the museum entry building, we took another last look at some of the exhibits before returning to the pub in Corbridge to collect our heavy rucksacks, which we were pleased to leave there for the morning. Moving on, we walked down Waddling Street and looked out for a coffee shop for a late morning snack and hot drink. Waddling Street is most commonly known in the south of England, linking London with the lands where Birmingham is now, but it continued further north into Scotland. In the centre of town, Kit and I wandered, explored and enjoyed the brighter weather. Our rucksacks are still heavy, but without having to push on for endless miles, we were not overly bothered by them. It is hard to know what the River Tyne looked like to the Romans as it flowed through this part of the valley. Surely it was just as large and flooded occasionally too, like in modern times. This stone bridge dates back to 1774, although it was widened in 1881. It has survived many serious floodings in the area, where other bridges have fared less well. It must have been a significant engineering challenge for the Roman construction experts to have built a bridge strong enough to withstand this much water over the breadth of the valley here. I don't think they had YouTube in those days, but if they did, there would surely have been a fascinating channel which recorded and celebrated the construction of the bridge, like modern channels showcase current significant railway, road and building constructions. South a little, we found the side road leading to the railway station to catch the next train east towards Newcastle. If you've enjoyed this video so far, how about clicking the thumbs up button? I'd certainly appreciate the feedback. The service is operated by Northern Railways using 158 express sprinters dating back to the early 90s. Our next overnight location is at Wylam, just 4 stops along the line. Time was very much on our side today, with an easy schedule and not so far to trek during the day. We have more to see later, so stick with us to include 2 fascinating historical locations at Wylam.
This is Corbridge.
Wylam station is quite unique in that for such a relatively small station it has a dominant signal box straddling and overlooking the tracks. As with many of the railway buildings along this line, much of the paintwork has been tidied up and refreshed here at Wylam. The level crossing is very active. The trains frequently cause the road to be blocked. Fortunately, the road is not overly busy and carries mostly local traffic. Our overnight stopping point is the pub next to the station, the Boathouse Inn. After checking in and dumping our main bags, we venture out once again, but rather lighter on our feet. In research for the trip weeks ago, Kit found that the birthplace cottage of George Stephenson is just outside Wylam. But before going there, we'll follow a disused railway line west a mile or so to look at a well-known bridge locally called the Hagg Bank Bridge. Back in 1876, the bridge was built to connect the rail loop on the north side of the Tyne to the Carlisle and Newcastle railway. Back then, there was just one railway bridge crossing the Tyne in Newcastle, the high-level twin-deck bridge, and traffic was then able to approach Newcastle station from the west along the north bank of the Tyne. The second rail bridge in Newcastle, the King Edward Bridge, was opened later in 1906. The single span of the bridge here was needed to avoid the placing of piers in the riverbed, as not far below are mine workings and the engineers had to avoid loading a weak area of ground. The height of the bridge is significant too, as it's much higher than the water level even during winter floodings. In fact, this was about the only bridge to survive the Great Flood locally in 1871. The crossing became redundant with the closure of this part of the line in 1968, but it's since been reopened as a path and cycleway. Back along the old railway track path, we continued a mile or so east out of Wylam to find George Stephenson's birthplace. The story of George's upbringing, surrounded by industrial development and the challenges of railway improvement, began with his growing up in this little cottage. When George was born in 1781, the primitive Wylam Waggonway, which passed right in front of the cottage, linking collieries at Wylam to dockyards on the Tyne, had been operating for over 40 years. George was fascinated by the Waggonway, and by the time he was of working age, he was very involved in the workings of railways and their engineering developments. In 1876, the year that the old Waggonway route was converted into a proper railway line, joining Newcastle with the line to Carlisle over the Hagg Bridge, George had been dead almost 30 years, but his influence in railway design had been permanently established. He would have been very impressed with the construction and engineering of the modern steam locomotives, then travelling along the fast double-track lines right in front of its parents' old cottage. Kit and I have had a full day out exploring the local area. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see more similar stories, please check out other videos in my channel. You may be interested in the video in the pop-up on the left here, or the playlist on the right. Until next time, thanks for watching and bye for now.